Good morning, everybody. Saigan here with another Quester's Rest. It is Friday, the 22nd of September, and I have had enough time to digest my thoughts on Earthbound. I did a marathon for it last week, started almost exactly 7 days ago. Took me 3 days. End game time was 29 hours, but that also includes the breaks that I took. So not actually a terribly long game. According to Pat, I played Earthbound like I played Dragon Quest, and you're not supposed to play Earthbound that way. You're supposed to glass cannon your way through the game instead of fighting every single monster on your way through the cave until you get to the boss and then fighting the boss. Like you're supposed to just use your psi abilities to burn everything down. Man, the psi jokes were constant during this. But I play it like Earthbound. Or I play Earthbound like Dragon Quest. You know what I'm trying to say. But how does it compare? I was really, really, really impressed with Mother when I played it. I'm a bit more forgiving of 8-bit RPGs, though. Particularly ones that are experimental. And this is definitely experimental. They took the Dragon Quest formula and turned it on its head with a more modern setting, interesting abilities, and a very, very unique story that felt disjointed until you get to the end of the game when it all brings it together. A fantastic experience. Just wonderful experience. I would mark this as one of my favorite 8-bit RPGs. I don't feel it's better than Phantasy Star 1 or Final Fantasy 3, but it does stand close to them. I can't speak as kindly about Earthbound. I feel that this is a subpar game. Overall, it is balanced better, but where it is balanced poorly, which is in a couple of places in the game, it feels almost as poorly balanced as the end area of Mother 1, which is really my biggest problem with the game. What is it? Itoi Mountain? Mount Itoi? At the end of Mother 1 is infuriating. It's worse than the entirety of the Cave to Roan, Roan itself, and the entire march up to Melroth. This is worse than that. That is, like, it's impossible to compare how terrible the balance is in Roan, which is well documented, and we know why it was so poorly balanced. There was a bug in how they test combat outcomes, so when there are multiple enemies of the same type appearing on the field, it was only checking to see party success against one of the given enemy. So those 4 green dragons, those exist because it was balanced so that 1 green dragon would be just challenging enough. That's why Roan sucks so hard. This is worse. This is way, way worse. And it's one of the reasons why I don't know if I'm ever actually going to play through the entirety of the game again. There is a rebalanced ROM that's out there. I think it's on starman.net, which supposedly fixes those issues. And if I ever play Mother again, I'm going to play that version, because this was absurd. Now, it's the only actual, like, major mark against the game that I can make. That's it. Everything else about Mother was fantastic. The storytelling, the setting. And while it was definitely balanced towards grinding solves everything for the majority of the game. Oh, and some of the dungeons were terrible too. It was like a fireworks factory or something in it. It was a nightmare. It was a nightmare. It was that dungeon was designed by whoever did the Phantasy Star 2 dungeons, and I want to find that man, and I want to put him in therapy because I want to know who hurt him. Earthbound 2 is less consistent. in its problems. I say Earthbound 2. Mother 2, Earthbound, as we all know and love. The one on the Super Nintendo, you know what I'm talking about. Spores were not tested at any point. Either that or I am incredibly unlucky. But here's the thing about RPG game design. If you're going to have a status ailment that is crippling to your party, sleep, paralysis, confusion, things that will immediately make any seasoned RPG player say, I cannot continue through the area like this. I need to rid myself of this status ailment before I can continue. If it persists through the end of combat, and it is that bad, there needs to be a way to deal with it on the field that is controllable by the player. Spore is that bad. In fact, it's worse. It's probably one of the worst status ailments I've ever seen, because it confuses and it fucks with your movement controls outside of combat. Which, in a game like Earthbound, where you have the ability to dodge enemy fights, because there's a lot of very dangerous enemies in the game, and fights tend to be very fast in the game, it's super important that you're able to move. I feel that if any one aspect of Spore were adjusted, it would immediately be 100% more balanced. But instead, it's the perfect storm of nonsense. There is zero controllable way for you to deal with it in the field. Apparently, it'll go away if you get hit by a fire attack. But here's the kicker. You might not be fighting an enemy that can use fire attacks, and 2, you can't target your own fucking party members. This isn't a post-Final Fantasy War. I can't even talk right now. I'm so frustrated. I wanted to wait a week before I made this video so that I could think about it and fully digest it and see if I was just frustrated during the marathon, because when you play the same game 3 days in a row for more than 5 or 6 hours in a row, it's easier to get more frustrated than maybe the game deserves. I even had this with, like, Pokemon Omega Ruby. I found, like, a list of complaints during my single-sitting playthrough of Pokemon Omega Ruby that were unfounded. Looking back at the issues that I had with that game, I don't think any of them were really valid. And that's why I wanted to wait a week this time to discuss Earthbound. And oh my god! Oh my god, no, they're valid, they're totally valid. And there's a reason that this game also, apparently, I haven't checked this myself, but it's what I've been informed of, also has rebalanced ROMs available. Now, setting aside Spore and how awful it is, and how it kills any dungeon run immediately, and you need to immediately go and find a faith healer or some other way to deal with it without an exit spell and with fucky controls. Setting that aside, how is the game? I'd still say subpar to this one. The story in the second game is not as personal. It's not without, or it's not without its strong points. There's a lot of very memorable parts of the game, and story alone, I definitely enjoyed it. I just feel that it's weaker compared to the one in Mother. The storytelling is improved, but the story itself is weaker. It's easier to understand what is going on in Earthbound than it was in Mother. Mother was extremely cryptic until the very end, but it felt like there was a plan there. This one felt like, hey, let's make a sequel. It doesn't add anything to the series. It provides an ending to Gygas's story, I guess. But what baffles me is how so many people fell in love with this game and talk about the final boss and how horrifying he was when we didn't have access to the original game for so long. Gygas in Earthbound is... he's like Zeramus, almost, in FF4. Well, no, that's an unfair comparison. Zeramus, you'd never even see coming. Golbez was the villain in FF... If you haven't played FF4, the primary villain through the entire game is Golbez. And you're dealing with Golbez's shit the entire game. You get to the very end, and, oh, it wasn't Golbez. It was me all along, Zeramus. And you're like, who? And then you have to fight him, and then you beat him, and you're like, the day has been saved. We've defeated Zeramus, who was apparently behind everything, and we've never heard of him before. It's like the bait and switch with Malroth at the end of Dragon Quest 2. It's the horrible, horrible swap that you get at the end of so many RPGs. I guess Gygas isn't that bad. Gygas, I don't know how its name is supposed to be pronounced. I'm sure someone will correct me, thanks. He is a constant throughout the game. You know at the beginning of the game that your purpose is to deal with Gygas. But unlike the first Mother game, you don't learn anything about him. It kind of assumes that you have knowledge of the first game. So that's already concerning. Like, I don't know why you couldn't find, like, the great-grandfather's diary from the first game in this one or something, so you could at least learn the backstory about Gygas. You could learn about Maria, his adopted mother, and, you know, his relationship with her, and why he has become rage and hatred manifest. They don't tell you any of that in this. I understood what was going on only because I played this one. And that does not a good story make. Even if a game is part of a trilogy, you should make it accessible to those who didn't play the first one. Mass Effect does this. I need a better example than Mass Effect. I need an example from Phantasy Star. Phantasy Star is a great example. Phantasy Star, through the storytelling process of each subsequent game in the series, and when I say Phantasy Star series, I just mean the first four, 1, 2, 3, and 4, discusses the events of previous games so that you can enjoy Phantasy Star 4 as a standalone experience. It is better having played the previous 3 because it feels more personal to you, but it is not necessary to understand the Dark Force and how dangerous it is. You don't know anything about Gygas off of this game alone. The music was good. The characters were good. I feel that Pooh has that last party member issue. Like, it didn't really feel like we got enough time to get to know Pooh. Even though he had, like, his own little segment, but it was over in, like, 10 minutes. I don't know. I felt like we knew Paula? Paula, the girl. I feel like we knew Paula better. We knew Jeff better. And this is, you know, in terms of JRPG storytelling on a Super Nintendo. It's no FF6. It's no Chrono Trigger. Is Earthbound a bad game? No. Does it deserve its place in history? It is culturally significant within RPG gaming in the same way that FF7 is. It introduced a lot of people to the genre. A lot of people have fond memories of it. It did not age well. And therefore, I have a really hard time qualifying it to be a classic. Because I think that part of being a classic is that a game should age magnificently. That includes balance, that includes the gameplay, that includes the storytelling. All of it should age extremely well. Fire truck. So let's give it the Super Nintendo RPG test. In what ways did Earthbound age well? Graphically, I think it aged very well. The sprite art in this is fantastic. You can tell what everything is, which is important, because that was a problem with, like, Final Fantasy VII. For example, Final Fantasy VII, sometimes it's just a mess of polygons. Everything in Earthbound is extremely clear what it is. I totally give it a pass in the aging graphics department. It's colorful, it's beautiful, it's very unique as far as it looks, and it is full of charm. So yeah, give it an A there, 100%. I love how this game looks. I love the presentation, and I love how unique it is. Music. Man, the music in this game was really weird. But it had like this great like jazziness to it, which was also very unique. I don't know who the composer was, but I want to bet that it's the same composer from the first one, because they had very similar feels. I give the music a pass on how it's aging as well. Storytelling. Well, we talked about storytelling. The storytelling in this one is extremely weak compared to the other one. Has memorable moments, yes. Character development. What character development? There's not much here, which, compared to other RPGs of this era, it's pretty rough. I know that there's not really much character development in, say, the earlier Dragon Quest games, but there is character development in Dragon Quest V. A fair freaking bit. Final Fantasy IV feels like it's only character development at times, so character development in this game was fairly weak. Aside from, like, there were some interesting characters within it. Pokey really feels like the best developed character, which is awful, because fuck that kid. Apple Kid as well. Paula and Jeff, who not so much. The characters were not very memorable. They were memorable in their abilities. Like, Jeff's abilities were top-notch. I liked how Paula's glass cannonness and importance to the final boss was handled. If only everybody could be so important during the final boss, like maybe the main character. Chrono Trigger did everything better. Secret of Mana did everything better. Final Fantasy III. This is an unfair comparison because I worship this game. Watching later. Super Mario RPG did everything better. It's not the worst RPG I've ever played. Would I recommend it to somebody who's new to RPGs? Yes. Would I recommend it for a child's first introduction to RPGs? Well, yes. I mean, it's become popular and loved the way that it is for a reason. But we're doing a better job now, and we were doing a better job then. And the same people did a better job years before. So ultimately, it was a memorable experience, but an incredibly frustrating one. And I do not believe that Earthbound is deserving of all of the praise that it gets. That's my opinion. If you disagree with me and want to bite my head off, you're more than welcome to in the comments below. So thank you for watching, everybody. I will be streaming today. It is Friday, so it's just kind of a stream whatever day. There's not a lot of people around in chat right now, so I'm not even going to bother with Melty Blood. I know Abyss wants to do some Melty Blood, and I'll find a time, Abyss. We'll play some Melty Blood again. But I got a review code. Thank you, Orbo. Thank you, gamesatdusk.com. I've been writing reviews over there. I have a Dragon Quest 11 review coming up over there soon. Bandai Namco provided gamesatdusk.com with a review code, and Orbo saw fit to deliver it to me because I have a racing wheel, and I'm the only person who writes for them who's really into the racing games. So I'll be playing some more of that today. First impressions, the physics are really good. It drives really well. If I could give it a score off of the driving alone, I'd give it an A. Unfortunately, bugs and AI and clunky menu. Check out gamesatdusk.com for the full review when I finish writing it. So thanks for watching, everybody. This is Saigan with another Quester's Rest, and I will see you all later, hopefully on the stream. Peace out.